I'm Chris Heilmann from Mozilla. I just came back from the States 2 days ago, so I'm completely shattered, and I gave a keynote yesterday at another conference, so I wrote this on the train here, so it's going to be interesting. When I'm asked to give a keynote, it's normally an inspiring thing, like blue sky, like South by Southwest bollocks thing, that basically gets people in the mood and everything. And I've done 3 of those in a row right now in 2 weeks, and I thought I'd do a different thing. So today I'm actually telling you why I'm excited right now to be a web developer, and I'm telling you why you should be excited as well. And I'm going to make you feel very, very at ease about this big specter of like us losing our jobs to native development. And then I'm going to overload you with code and show you lots and lots of stuff that you can use right now without even yet knowing it. And we're going to finish then with even more stuff that you can look into that will be covered by other people throughout the whole talk. So there's code ahead, but not live, so don't worry about it, but it's all going to be pretty intense. Not really, but it's going to be interesting, I guess. So I'm a very happy web developer. I've been doing web development for probably the age of some of your children. I've been doing it for 15, 16 years now, and I've been doing it in horrible, horrible environments. And I've done it with very, very bad browsers, very bad connectivity, and I've seen things in the last year cropping up and changes happening that just make me like, wow. We used to be these geeks in the corner that like, the main market didn't know what we were doing, my mom still doesn't know what I'm doing, she's like, you get paid, right? Yes, I do. Oh, but you do this internet thing, what's that about? And I'm like, Mom, it will be successful one day, don't worry about it. And I've also seen things like developers being sought right now. I mean, we're the only market where we get job offers weekly or dailies in some cases. And other people basically just say, oh, I can't find a job. And we still complain about like, oh, our recruiters are so bad, they don't know the difference between Java and JavaScript. And you're like, no, yeah, they're recruiters. They should know other things like people skills, like the thing you just don't show at that moment right now. So we have incredible tooling. Like all the browsers, every single browser we have, actually, I'm standing completely in front of that, yeah. Every single browser we have has built-in tools, really built-in wonderful tools that people can use and actually develop and find out what's going on the page. Every single thing of the page is available to you. You know what styles have been applied to it. You know what JavaScript has been applied to it. You know why this is green. Not like you hope you know why it's green. You can actually find out why it's green and change it to blue. And the really cool thing about developer tools is that they're built in the browser that we're using as well. So our end users have the same interface that we have for developing. And I think that's very, very important. And it's something that in general in software we have to break, that there's this clash between what our end users have and what we use. We shouldn't have power tools and our end users use other things that we cannot replicate. And that's where mobile development can get frustrating. We also have detailed control in all these events and in all these tools. Like this is a screen right now from the Chrome developer tool showing you the difference between set timeout and request animation frame, and showing you how many milliseconds you actually win by using request animation frame. And normally these were the kind of tools that only QA people had, or people that worked on browsers before, and now every single developer out there can go under the hood and basically open the hood of the browser and see what's happening there. You can turn on the rendering, you can turn on seeing which frames have been rendered, how many frames per second it used. Like we have full control over the environment that we're working in, which cracks me up because when I talk a lot to native developers, they're like, oh, the web is shit because I don't have control over anything, and I don't have an SDK, and I don't have a development environment. They're like, okay, if you want to download 4 gig of LE just to get started, that's your choice. I can use a command line for that, and use VI or use Emacs or whatever. So we have the insight into the browser that we never had before, and still we're complaining that browsers are not good enough. And browsers are awesome. They're absolutely amazing right now. All of them are getting better and better every single day, and all of them are using the same rendering engine for a change. Like in HTML5, I can predictably say what a browser is going to do with my HTML. Before that, I could never do that. Like browsers did, Firefox did one thing, Opera did another thing, Microsoft did a completely wrong thing, and other browsers did other things again. Now we have an even starting point, and all the browsers start with the same ideas. And we have many, 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 many great tools, and they're just amazing out there. Right now we got this fetish for coming up with a new preprocessor or build script or thing that makes our job easier. Every time we solve a problem, we make a tool for it and send it out to the world because the world might have that problem one day as well. Most of the time they don't have that problem, but that doesn't matter. We release something on GitHub and we're awesome. So a lot of these preprocessors make our lives much, much easier. They have a bit of an overhead as well in our production because you have to explain to new people coming on the project what you're using. But it's incredible how many people are optimizing their job and analyzing what they're doing. In the past, we haven't done that. We just wrote things out and wondered why they were actually not working. Whereas things like Grunt or Bootstrap get you started really quickly across all of the devices that you want to support and optimized as well. So there's a good opportunity there for you to do these things. However, we're getting a bit overboard at time. I loved this the other day when somebody released the HTML responsive boilerstrap.js. What is it? It's a flexible, dependency-free, lightweight, device-agnostic, modular, baked-in component framework, MVC library, shoelace strap to help you kickstart a responsive CSS-based app architecture, backbone, kitchen sink, Tweetyverse. So if you implement that tomorrow, you're going to be very, very successful. So that's the kind of messaging we get a lot. There's a lot of marketing around our cool scripts, like, this will mean you never have to learn HTML. And you're like, that's not that hard. Like, why don't we let people learn HTML? But we get very excited about our abstractions at the moment, and some of them are really good because they get people started quickly. If you're a startup and you just want to have a website out there and you want to really concentrate on your app, use Bootstrap for the website. That's totally fine. Like, you're not going to get millions of users on the first day anyways. And when you get bought by a large corporation, you're going to get changed anyways completely, and your website is probably going to go offline. That's how it works. So, and then you get this fear from people, and some speakers say like, well, isn't it all going native? Like, isn't the web dead? And isn't like everything so much better on my iPhone and my iPad and my 12 Android phones and my things that I forgot about that I still had? And yes, the native market is definitely there. People are having smartphones and are using them. And smartphones rock. They look really, really good. They actually do the job, and they allow us to communicate worldwide with friends that are somewhere else, complaining about how I can't find friends in my family or in my neighborhood because I'm not talking to them. Instead, I'm actually on the internet complaining that I can't find real people. But the change that smartphones brought is that people that wouldn't touch a computer, or wouldn't touch a mouse, or wouldn't touch a keyboard at all, would actually now go on the internet and do things with it. To a degree. They started going on the internet, and then they started just installing apps and uninstalling apps and installing apps and forgetting about them. It's whenever I talk to people about apps, they're like, so we just released a new marketplace, and I'm going to come to that in a second. The question is always like, how many apps do you have? And my question was like, how many apps do you have on your phone? Well, about 120. How many do you use? About 6. Don't see a problem there somewhere? Like, we don't need that many things that we're using at the moment because they're just not flexible enough. They do one thing well, but the one thing I needed once and I had to install an app for it. So I find this a step back in time for me when I installed things from floppy disks or CDs and stuff and had things like download.com or 2cows to get software from. So it started actually really well. Steve Jobs, 2007, released the iPhone. Well, he didn't. His company did. Quite a few people helped him. And he said that one thing that he said on stage that got really forgotten really quickly was like, we reinvented the phone from scratch. This is not a Nokia, this is not a Samsung, this is not one of those old dumb phones. This is a new phone, we reinvented it. And we reinvented it by putting the web on the phone. And by actually having Safari as the rendering engine or the browser on it. And he said that no SDK is required. There's no need to actually write software for it bespokely for that phone because it has the best browser, in his idea, Safari already on it. And I loved that. I heard that and I got really excited about it. And then it got really forgotten really quickly because he got a lot of backlash in the company and he got a backlash from developers because a minute before that he said like, hey, there's OS X running on that thing. And all OS X developers were like, yes, we can use the stuff that we know. And then he said like, oh, the apps are actually in the web. But wait, what? I want to use OS X. I want to use the thing that I know and make like really cool apps with that. So the market in Apple itself seems to have shifted very, very quickly away from that idea that everything is the web on the phone to like you can build native apps with Xcode and all the things for OS X and for iOS as well. And I think that's a shame because I totally share his vision about that HTML can actually do good apps, and browsers are good enough to render interfaces of apps as well. But if you look into a web view right now in iOS, you don't get the performance that you get on the desktop for OS X, for example. You already have a bit of a break, a bit of a wall against you when you're trying to get HTML5 apps to convert them into iOS apps and then compare them with native apps. And the whole idea of comparing to native apps, I get this every day. Like as the HTML5 guy from Mozilla, people come up to me like, so how does it compare to the native app on that phone that I just spent £600 for? And you're like, okay, well, you cannot compare the two because native apps are actually products. They're products that are packaged up and supposed to be just for one use case. HTML5 is supposed to be for the web. You could use whatever you want to serve the web with, and you should get something. You shouldn't get the same experience everywhere. That would be releasing JPEGs and hoping that they render correctly across browsers either, which they don't either at all. But you should get something. So whenever we do like this one-to-one comparison between HTML5 apps and native apps, we try to make the HTML5 app work everywhere. If we really want to have parity, make it work in one browser, in one environment, and on one computer. That's enough to have parity with a native app, because that's what they do. And we shouldn't do it with HTML5, so we're actually shooting ourselves in the foot every time we do a comparison between the two. And the problem that I found is like, why was that backlash so big? Why did Apple not say like, okay, Steve Jobs, you had good ideas in the past, that's a great idea, let's go full web on that phone. And then I realized that Apple makes a lot of money, together with other companies, by selling hardware. And hardware is a product that has to change continuously. If you look at who makes money in the mobile space, it's not Apple, it's not Google, it's actually Samsung and other hardware providers that make the most money. And Apple makes the most money with their App Store because they have great hardware that people want to run their apps on. And I analyzed that and thought, like, where's that coming from? And I found something that goes back to 1955. In 1955, in the Journal of Retailing in America, a man called Victor Lebow said that the only way that how Americans' productive economy can survive, how people can get jobs to work in factories, how people have actually income, is by that we make consumption our way of life, that we convert the buying and use of goods into rituals. That buying becomes almost a religion, that people seek satisfaction, find personal satisfaction in buying things. And to make that work continuously, we need actually things consumed, burned up, replaced, and discarded at an ever-accelerating rate. So that was a surgical way to boost the economy by building products that break. And that has been a tradition since then. People have been doing that all the time. I mean, these are Doc Martens from 12 years ago. They're still okay. If you buy a pair of Doc Martens right now, they're not produced in England anymore. They're not produced the same way those have been produced. They're going to be dead in 2 years' time because they want to sell you a new pair. The only other thing I know that lasts for ages is the Pneumatic, that little Hoover with a face on it, and I've got that one at home as well. I love this thing. And I only bought it because on Amazon, the review said, oh, this one was rubbish, it only lasted 9 years, whereas the last one was 14 years. And I'm like, that's a cool product to buy. But Victor Lebow basically said, like, we gotta make sure that people consume, and we gotta make products break. Now, breakage is not enough, because products still last a long time. Like phones, for example, last quite well. You can drop them several times, unless they're an iPhone. Then you can drop them once, and then you go into the Apple Store and get condescended to by a genius. But there was this man here, this very satisfied, happy individual, Clifford Brooks Stevens, who came up with the idea of planned or built-in obsolescence. He basically said the surgical approach is not enough. Things breaking is not enough. We have to make sure that people buy things even if they're not broken. So he came up with the idea of instilling in the buyer the desire to own something a little newer, a little better, a little sooner than is necessary. Make people want new things because you have to sell them more. But how do you do that? You do that by changing the style. So changing the styling of products so consumers will purchase products more frequently. The style changes are designed to make owners of the old model feel out of date. And that's already happening. You use a second-generation iPhone in a bar around here at Shoreditch, and people will throw their ironic mustaches and hats at you or something like that. You gotta have the newest and coolest, otherwise you're not part of the crowd. And people like, I built something on the desktop, people say, that doesn't work on my iPad 2 Retina, what are you doing? You're holding the web back. You're like, really? This is how you see the web? Fair enough. So this whole idea of obsolescence has been running us for years and years and years. And even in the 60s, some cynical thinkers gave it a lashback and basically said, like, all it is a systematic attempt to businesses to make us wasteful, debt-ridden, permanently discontented individuals. I mean, a few stand-up comedians have said that before, that everything is awesome and everybody's unhappy. And this is actually the case that we have right now. We just think it's not good enough what we have because of the products being built that way. So I don't want to do that. I don't want to be part of this. I came to the web from radio journalism to actually give people stuff and have people worldwide on the web communicating with me. And I don't want that to be reliant on a 600-pound phone. I don't want that to be reliant on a retina display that takes 20 hours to download the first image on your 3G connection somewhere in Africa. So I want a web where anybody can take part. Because excitement about products can go away very, very quickly. I mean, how silly does that guy feel now? But back then, like, I got Windows 95 and I only queued up for 6 hours. This is amazing, you know? It's like, I remember when the first iPhone came out, a colleague of mine went to the Apple store and queued up here in London for 6 hours and came to the office with like, look, I got the iPhone. And I'm like, oh, my old Nokia is something your iPhone doesn't have. He's like, what? Telephone numbers of real girls. And that shut him up a bit, but he was really happy having the first iPhone until 3 months later he needed a new one again. So I think we're better on the web. We should reach further. We should think about next year, the next 2 years, the next 3 years. And not about like, how can we build a product right now that we sell and then we have to change it and people have to pay extra money for the upgrade. Many games on mobile phones are actually released so the next phone comes out. So they actually use technology or use hardware that is not available in the old ones, so you can actually buy the next phone and it gets released on the new releasing of the new phone and whatever. And I think we should stop trying to copy that market. We should stop trying to build products that are limited in their access. The web is there to be flexible. You can use a 27-inch monitor or a small phone. Your website should be clever enough to realize that, your web app should be clever enough to realize that and give you not only a smaller and bigger view, but actually a better experience. I do different things that I do on a desktop that I do on a mobile phone. So give me a contextual interface, not just a resized interface with the use cases optimized for those environments. And native technology can never do this. But the web, with its flexibility and its modularity, can definitely do that, and you all can be part of that. So we should stop limiting ourselves on the web as well. There was this big specter of like, WebKit is the only browser because it runs on Android, on iOS, and on Chrome, and like nobody else is there but WebKit. There's one WebKit to rule them all, which was always a lie, because there were several WebKits and lots of WebKits built into different browsers with different ways of rendering. It was just the same word. It's like saying sausage is the same in every shop. It isn't. Well, the good thing is, the bad thing and the horrible thing that we all got like, oh my God, what happened? What I was really happy about happened last week, and that is when Blink got released. Before that, we had these kind of things. This is in Barcelona in the airport. They give you 15 minutes of free Wi-Fi. And this is the form what it looks like on my phone. It's optimized for the first iPhone. It doesn't have a proper viewport tag in there, so it doesn't resize accordingly on my phone. This is the kind of stuff we need to fix, and we can fix that really quickly. And we can fix that now that we realize that the iPhone is not the only thing out there, and WebKit is not the same on all browsers. So Google released the Blink rendering engine. And that one basically is inside Chrome now, and is actually Opera has been part of that as well and has taken it on. And I'm just waiting for Microsoft Marquee to be released as the next rendering engine. But it's good. We have a new rendering engine in the WebKit space, and this basically tells you developers you cannot rely on one browser and one environment, because they all actually are different. And we shouldn't optimize for one of them. We optimized for Internet Explorer 6, that gave us all these great like ticket system or room booking systems that you have to have a virtual machine on your Mac for to use them in the office. We should not repeat that mistake, so let's stop the blinking. I couldn't believe that I had to write a CSS animation to make things blink nowadays, because the blink tag doesn't work anymore. I still get a lot of people that like, okay, fair enough, do HTML5, but HTML5 can't do the things that native apps can do. I cannot do this, I cannot do that, that is broken, that is slow. What am I going to do? How am I going to approach that? I think it's very much important that we realize that HTML5 is more than the iPhone. iPhone was the first thing that made HTML5 successful. Flash was basically on stage. Steve Jobs said, oh, Flash is dead, and we now have HTML5 for everything. So use Safari, use HTML5. And then we built lots of HTML5 things that only worked on the iPhone and nowhere else. And that's just bad. That's not the way you should be doing things. So don't get discouraged by what doesn't work on an iPhone. Get encouraged by what works across all the others. Install FIREFOX on your old Android and see how good it actually renders HTML5. Have Chrome on your new Androids and see how it actually does that. Install Opera on an old Android and see that it still is in the market there. So the perceived obsolescence of Android is being killed by Firefox and Opera because you get HTML5 browsers on old Androids. You don't get that with Chrome, sadly enough. And on iOS, you get iOS. You cannot do it on a browser on there. But still, it's getting better and better. And I think now with the parting of the ways of Chrome and WebKit, that will only mean that Safari iOS gets much better for us as well. So don't think what the iPhone can't do means it's the end of HTML5. You can do so many cool things on a desktop with HTML5. A drag and drop of files into the browser doesn't work on an iPad, but it's a really, really cool thing for your content management systems on the desktop, instead of having people do an upload form feed or something like that. So one of the main things that we as Mozilla thought, because we're a non-for-profit organization to keep the web open, is where can we go with this? How do we make sure that we don't lose everybody to native applications and to native closed environments with the perceived obsolescence built in? And we thought, okay, why don't we go somewhere else? Why don't we go where the others don't go? Why don't we go to the market of millions of people out there that are still suffering their old Nokias and Samsungs and Motorolas and all these feature phones that have been around for a long, long time, because they cannot afford an iPhone, or they're in a country where an iPhone's not at all available. And this is what we're doing right now. We're replacing feature phones with affordable phones that are web-enabled and fully and utterly built in HTML5. So all of you can have your apps running to millions of users that are not reached by Android, that are not reached by iOS. And this is what we wanted to do. We wanted to have these people on the web with their phones. They don't have desktop computers. They have mobile phones. That's the only thing that people can afford. Brazil, for example, or in Venezuela, Chile, those countries where we're actually reaching that. We built a system called FireFox OS, which is an operating system completely built on a Linux core and the Firefox engine running HTML5. Nothing else in there. No native code. HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. The whole operating system on GitHub, available for you to play with and actually use it as well for your own things if you wanted to. You can customize the interface of the operating system. You can add your own code into it. And as we released this a year ago, we had a preview, and people were like, yeah, whatever, it sounds like WebOS. We don't know what that's going to be. And this year we went to the Mobile World Congress, and we killed it. People loved it to bits. People came up to us. I gave 54 interviews in 2 days in 3 languages with different press people, getting incredibly excited that one company, who's a non-for-profit, managed to pull 18 different mobile phone providers and 4 hardware providers to bring new phones to the market where nobody else managed to get to so far. So this is what's happening. All your apps can go to new people who are hungry for really cool stuff on the web and are not as tainted as the people saying like, yeah, but it doesn't work like my Angry Birds, blah, blah, blah. So we start with a marketplace that we have in there. But you know what? That's not good enough. I hate marketplaces by now. I don't think that they're actually sensible. I think that they're just like these download.com or twocows.com, just after a year later, they will look like after the zombie attack. When people say, oh, we got 300,000 apps in our marketplace. Yeah, I always wanted to choose from 52 fart apps. That's a really good idea. And I always wanted to wait 2 weeks until my code is available for the people that I want to reach and can be taken off the market without me having any say in it anytime soon as well. We have a better publication model that is called the web, and this is what we're using for that. So instead of just having a marketplace, we also have a find app by content functionality. And let's see if the wireless works, so I can quickly show you what that means. So this is the Firefox emulator. Should I go for that? Go. This is the emulator, so this is what the operating system looks like any other mobile phone application, but this is plain HTML and does all the things that you expect them to do. Now, if you wanted to know, if you want to have a music app for your favorite band, you have to go to a marketplace, navigate to music, find out which app is music. Then you have to actually look at the reviews and hope that these reviews haven't been done by Mechanical Turk, but actually somebody really who cares about that kind of stuff. In reality, all you want to know is what app does music, and you enter a band. So in this case, you do a search now, say for example U2, because that's easy to type in. And when the wireless doesn't crap out on me, which it does of course, well, we're almost there. What it does, it finds apps that have to do with U2. So it gives me YouTube for videos, Grooveshark, SoundCloud for music, Wikipedia, Songkick for concert tickets, and so on and so forth. So now I can actually start saying, okay, let's take a look at Songkick, what that looks like, and try out the app. And once I like the app, I can go back to the search result, do a long click on it, and install it. And this is not like iOS where I just put a bookmark on my page, but actually then installs the whole app with the offline storage and everything. So next time I'm starting the app, I don't have to be online, I can just actually start using it. So, okay, the wireless doesn't do anything for me, so we're going to stop that now. What that means for you is that these mobile versions of your websites that you put out there, you didn't even love for a few months now, become the advertising for your main application. Much like every app right now tries to send you to the Android app from the page. LinkedIn is my favorite, that doesn't allow you to scroll anymore, which is just useless. Your app, your website becomes the advertising for your app instead of having to get people to know your name by doing traditional advertising. So that's the benefit of that one. It brings the use case to the app rather than the app to the use case. And I think that's a very, very big step and something that we've done on the web for years. I found websites by adding stuff into Google. I didn't type in URLs. Nobody types in URLs anymore. We just go to Google first, search for things, click on the results. And with apps on Firefox OS and on the web, we can do the same thing. So you define a manifest file, that's how you actually make sure that it is an app. So we know it is an app, so we can index that in the later stage with the search engine as well, for example. You just define the icons and what access you want to the hardware and so on. You've got 3 levels of access. There's hosted apps. This is stuff that runs on your server, much like any mobile website right now, HTML5 website. This one has all the goodies that we know already, app cache, local storage, IndexedDB, Web SQL, like geolocation, all the things that we can do on the web right now. We've got privileged apps. This one needs a content security policy, meaning you cannot inject random JavaScript from outside, and it needs to be hosted on our marketplace because we want to make sure that you cannot change the app to some malware as soon as it has been reviewed. And we got certified apps, and these are basically for us and the mobile phone providers to give you basic functionality on the phone. So that's like the dialer app, the address book, these kind of things that come in an operating system that nobody else should mess with because your data could leak out if you actually do that. We did not go to providers and say, like, please sell that phone for us. We said, like, we've got this open source system that's going to rock my emerging markets. How many engineers do you have that you can give us to actually work with us on this? And every provider that we have has seconded engineers to actually build that with us. So that's the kind of commitment you get. And I love that to bits as well because we have localizers in countries where they're releasing it that we wouldn't be able to reach. The web APIs that hosted apps have are all the things that you expect, like you have a geolocation API, but you have things like network information, screen orientation, you can set alarms, WebFN. We did research in Brazil where we're going to release Firefox OS. People listen to the radio on their phone the whole time. Nobody does that here. So we had to build that app and build that standard. So all of these APIs are not Firefox OS only, they're not Firefox only. They're standardized APIs like proposals that other browsers can put in as well. For example, geolocation came from Firefox 3.5 and now is in every browser. Vibration API, called Web Vibrator before, is now supported in several browsers as well. Ambient light sensor is by Ericsson and other people already in their native browsers as well. And others are being sent out across the different browsers. The battery API is in every browser at the moment. And that's what I love most about it. I didn't want to build another system that is closed. I want to build standards that every browser can benefit from and get access to the hardware through JavaScript. So how do you install an app? You either go to the marketplace and people find it in the marketplace and install the app there. Or, if you already have a beautiful website that people surf to, you can tell them, hey, we have this as an app, you can store it on Firefox OS, and you can detect that it is Firefox OS first, and then you can make an install button in that simple JavaScript. All you have to do is put an event handler on a button saying like, navigator.mozapps install, point to the manifest URL, and then the app gets installed. So you don't need to go to the marketplace at all. The marketplace itself is based on APIs, so you can build no marketplace if you wanted to. You cannot just use the Firefox branding on it if you do random stuff on it, but you can do the whole selling, payment services, everything with APIs that have been secured and actually have been sent out to other providers as well. The battery API, very simple to use. It has a battery.charging boolean. It has a charge time that you can read out, and it fires event listeners when the level changes, the charging changes, charging time changes, and so on and so forth. That works on desktop. And it's actually not a bad idea, even for a desktop app, to say like, hey, you're low on battery, should I turn off the animations? Do you want to save some time? And I actually give you more time by not making it as shiny as it was before. And I would love an app for me to do that, rather than just like, hey, your battery, gone. I showed you that rotating unicorn, you really wanted that. Privileged apps can go further. They have a device storage API that actually can store on the device, on the SIM card, or on the SIM card, on the SD card itself. And TCP sockets, in case you want to do like a chat client or you want to talk to your server and do random things. Contacts API, accessing the contact, reading from the contact book. You cannot generate content without having it hosted on our server, and system XHR, which gives you a coarse interface to talk to other servers and get data from that. So you cannot just load random data into a hosted app, because that would allow, again, a security hole. Contacts APIs, for example, you can say, I want a new MOS contact, I added it with the name of Christian, I sent the contact safe, and I've got an on-success and on-error handler. So all of these APIs are built up as asynchronous event handlers. And that's the easiest way to actually get them done. So you could loop over a whole database and basically put them into the address book that way. Certified apps can do web telephony, so I can make a telephone call with a click, for example. I can find out if the phone is idle, I can get the Wi-Fi information, I can send SMS text messages, I can access the voicemail, I can do web Bluetooth and NFC. So all of these things have been spec'd out and are being implemented at the moment as well. There's a live wait where you can see where everything is available to you and if it's already ready. So why don't we allow all of that for hosted apps? I mean, that's the problem that we have in iOS as well. We get all these promises and we cannot access it. I know this thing vibrates, but I can't do anything with it and I can't access it. But we cannot allow you just to randomly access things in JavaScript from the web, because that security model of JavaScript in browsers right now is not good enough for that. So with certified access that are working on in ECMAScript right now, this will change as well. But right now, security holes in JavaScript are rampant and are actually very, very problematic. So we wanted to make sure that we review applications that do things on the phone that could access your information or could send telephone calls without you realizing it. There was malware on Android already that did telephone calls in the background while you were playing a game. And that's the thing that we wanted to avoid. But all we have is web activities, and that's another proposal that's out there that's working in Firefox right now on Android and in Firefox on Firefox OS, of course, as well. And web activities are the same as web intents or intents on Android. So instead of making a telephone call, I just tell the phone that there's a telephone number. I send the telephone number to the phone switches to the dialer app, the end user sends the call off, does the call, hangs it up, and it goes back to my app and it gets the duration of the call and the telephone number that was successfully dialed. So you have a full feedback. It's not like a telephone in iOS where I have a telephone pseudo protocol or a map pseudo protocol that goes from my app to the map app and doesn't come back anymore. You have a full feedback loop going to the app and back to it. So for example, if I do a pick activity, I want to have a photo. My app wants a photo. Do I really care if that photo comes from your camera or it comes from your gallery or your wallpapers or some application that actually set itself up to be like, I do the photo things for that guy,
That's what WebActivity allows you to do as well. So I just want to have a photo, so I do a pick call. And the pick call then has an interface like that saying like, okay, this app wants a photo. Do you want to get it from the wallpaper, from the gallery, or from the camera? WebIntents did the same thing in Chrome, but they got shut down because of interface problems. But on the phone, there is no interface problem, it's not there. On the desktop, there was a bit of an issue. So WebActivity would now say, okay, get me that photo, and this is the code for another one. So this is basically a code for dialing. If I have a want to call a telephone number, I say new WebActivity, name dial, data is that number, and that would switch to the dialer and back to it. The pick activity would be WebActivity pick, and you give it the data. So you say it's an image PNG, image JPEG, or image JPEG. If I give it another version here, or another MIME type, then it would pick another one. So if I said I want audio wave, then it would go, for example, to SoundCloud and get me a WAV file from there, or whatever app you set up for WAV files, or music files. And once you've done that, you can actually just get it, on Success Handler again, you create an image, you get the data as a blob, and then you write it out into the image element, and you go from there. So you've got a full loop going from your app to an app that has to be certified by the user and allowed by the user to get access to the camera and to get access to that and get it back. So that's the benefit of basically, you can use that to install your apps without messing with the user and asking them for 6,000 things to get access to that nobody ever reads. It's kind of like, did you read the terms and conditions? Yeah, of course I didn't. And you wonder why this actually puzzle game does telephone calls in your background. I like that actually more than allowing any app to do telephone calls because it's still in the hand of the user to make a call then. And I don't want that responsibility. I don't want my app to do things for you that you might not know. It's an extra step, yes, but it's actually, you might have set up another dialer app that actually goes through Skype so you don't have to call, pay for it or something like that. I don't know that, I don't want to know that. I just want to have you make a call or I want a photo from you. So that's what activities are about. So if you get excited about that, you want to have some of that and you're ready to go, the easiest step is to actually go to the Developer Hub at Mozilla, or to the hacks.mozilla.org blog, which is what I'm writing with my colleagues as well, where Robert Heilmann is the main editor for that. There we have lots and lots of information. The Developer Hub has ideas about design, how you design a good HTML5 app for the web, and not only for FIREFOX OS, for everybody out there. How to build it. There's a few building blocks, and there's a few demo apps that you can actually fork and work from. And then how to publish, how to get into the marketplace, how to self-publish, how to actually get the money in. And there's a web payments API that allows you to make payments from your app, either as in-app payments or selling the app up front. And the big change as well for this is that people that have FIREFOX OS don't need a credit card. App sales can happen through the telephone bill or can happen through prepaid SIM cards. So I could, for example, if you have kids, you could get a £50 SIM card with a Firefox phone, give it to your kid, here's games for £50. You don't have to give your credit card details onto that phone, you don't have to authenticate. When the kid throws the phone into the toilet, your credit card data doesn't go there either. It's just a £50 thing with a £100 phone probably. So that's the real value here, because my brother, for example, doesn't have a credit card. And I bought him a Mac because he kept breaking his Windows machine somehow. And every time he wants to buy his apps, I have to do it for him or send him vouchers through the App Store. And why is that in 2013 still necessary when there's so many other ways to actually bill people? And phone providers know how to do that, and they were really happy to reach people and get app sales onto the telephone bill as well, which I think is just handy. There's the simulator in the browser, which I showed you earlier, that gives you all the information. You can actually build 90% of your applications in that browser. It's very simple. And you get the error messages and everything out there. You can run the apps locally on your computer and then actually run it in the emulator and see it in there. In the new version, there's also a button that says send to phone. So if you have a phone, you just connect it with USB, you build it in the emulator and send it to the phone and see it running on the phone. So you've got remote debugging, much like you have in Chrome with Android by now as well, which is very, very important, I think. And there's an app called FIREFOX OS BOILERPLATE, which basically is already a flexible layout, a responsive layout of beautiful performance buttons. And all of these are actually showing you the steps for the right activities and work already. So if you just want to start building an app, you can use that one and delete all the things in the code that you don't need and just use the ones that you want to have. So you don't have to start from scratch every single time. That's a good showcase of what the operating system can do. We're building these, we do these app days where we allow people to shift their apps that they've written for Chrome and for Vodafone or for WebOS to Firefox OS. And most people started with that. And during one of these events, we also shifted Enyo, the JavaScript library for WebOS, to work with Firefox OS. So every WebOS developer that was rocking forwards and backwards in the corner saying, I know they're giving up on me, can now actually reuse their apps completely in Firefox OS. And it's just a push of a button, really, and a bit of a change of a look and feel. There's also a project called geeksphones.com where you can order phones that are specifications of the phones that end users will have, which is 1 GHz processor, 256 meg of RAM, which to me still sounds astronomical, but compared to other smartphones nowadays, it's ridiculous. But you can buy phones there and try them out and have a developer phone, and this will be going live in a month, I think, but you can pre-order the phones right now. You can also flash old Android phones if you've got an Nexus S or a Nexus S2, or if you've got an Ericsson phone, I think, and some Sony builds, you can actually put it on there as well to try it out. But I do 90% of it actually on my emulator because I don't want to mess around with the phone too much. The other good story is that everything that you see here that is in terms of web activities also work on Android if you got Firefox installed. So I'm using my Nexus 4 actually as my test platform for my app to see how the touch interface works and all these things. So there's nothing wasted. You don't have to wait for Firefox OS to be ready for you. You can actually build this now on the desktop, on your tablets, on your phones, and Android phones are already supported with that as well. And I hope that, that Chrome is going to take on web activities and others are going to take on web activities, because then we got the whole web interactive and being able to talk to other apps. It's like a right click say a right click on a desktop saying like open with rather than just open something randomly. So the web ride, I think, is far from over. I see this, and I see what Chrome does, and I see what Opera does, and I see what Windows does with HTML5 and these technologies, and I'm not afraid of my job. I'm not afraid that somebody's going to eat my lunch, as some people say. I mean, I cook my lunch myself. It would be very bizarre if they did. And I've been running this for 15 years, and I haven't been bored yet. And because I actually look at standards, I look at upcoming things, and I don't look at like what's breaking right now, because every 6 weeks you have a new browser. What is broken in Firefox right now can be fixed in 6 weeks, if not in 12 weeks. So don't worry about these things too much, but use them. We have this endless loop right now of developers not using new technology and browsers not implementing new technology because developers don't use them. So we need you to actually take a look at that stuff and be daring about it and basically say, let's work this out. And a good example, Flexbox. Flexbox is great for laying out things on the web, and like basically what we had in like things like Swing and other things for years. And Firefox didn't have Flexbox yet. Then Sencha released Fastbook that showcased that they can make HTML5 Facebook as fast as the native Facebook on iOS. And that one didn't support Firefox because it uses Flexbox extensively. So we had a reason to put Flexbox in. We had a proper reason, and people who did a lot of research into Flexbox in the implementation that can help us with working around bugs that we had. And now Flexbox is in Firefox nightly, so it's going to be in Firefox in 3 weeks' time, and you can play with it. So we need use cases, we need you to be daring about this. And there are so many fun things happening right now. ASM.js allows you to convert C++ games to JavaScript. So we got things like Electronic Arts just shifting their games onto the web without having to rewrite them. WebRTC allows you to do chat clients, but also allows you to data traffic on multiplayer games, for example. So you can do your Google Hangout, you can do a few lines of code yourself because of WebRTC. Get User Media gets access to the camera. Shadow DOM, there's going to be a talk about that later on. Shadow DOM allows you to build widgets in the browser that are part of the rendering of the browser, rather than an HTML construct on top of the rendering that will always be slow. You can tie it to the browser and actually build your own interfaces, much like When you put a video element in there, there's a play button and volume control and all kinds of things going on. And these are HTML elements, you just don't see them in the DOM. But with Shadow DOM, you can build those interfaces and build your own video player that is rendered by the browser. WebGL, 3D rendering in the browser, of course. Flexbox I talked about. Animations and transforms is a great thing because they're hardware accelerated. If you shift something around with a transform or an animation, it goes on the video chip rather than the main processor, and you don't fry eggs on your phone if you do it too much. It's a very, very good way of actually animating and getting rid of those jQuery animations that you don't need any longer because old browsers should not get them because they cannot get them anyways or cannot perform well in them. And ad supports is another thing that's right now in Firefox, which is in other browsers coming as well, which is basically like testing if something is supported before you execute your code. So you can say, Navigator supports Flexbox, and then put the rest of your code in that loop, instead of just hoping that the browser supports Flexbox. So you don't have to do the whole testing that we do with Modernizer and other libraries right now, because that's already built into the browsers. And every single week something new cool comes out. And think about that. This is not stopping anytime soon. So don't be too shabby about, like, I'm just a web developer. We're going to rock this. We're going to survive this native thing the much way we survived Java, the same way we survived Flash, because we're flexible. We're like water. We're not like a wall. And that's what I want you to think about the whole day. So thank you very much.